Stronghold Definitive Edition is a modern remaster of the 2001 classic, upgraded with improved visuals, modern system support, and Steam integration, plus a new campaign, new scenarios, and more. It's available now for $14.99 on Steam. I'd like to make it clear, if you didn't already know, that I took part in a sponsored deal with Firefly Studios during the game's marketing campaign. Firefly paid me to make 2 videos. Although there were no stipulations on anything I said, it was just to show off the game. This review is of course not sponsored, but you should know the relationship I've had with Firefly. They did provide me a pre-release code for this video, but like all reviews, they have not seen this video before it goes live, and have no say in its creation. Stronghold is a castle sim, somewhere between a classic RTS and a city builder or management game. As the lord of your castle, you're tasked with managing the peasants and structures of your hold. You need to grow and produce food, gather resources to build and support your castle, and create the weapons needed to defend it. In terms of complexity, its pipelines are a step or two further than something like Age of Empires, but a step or two back from something like Anno. A big part of your job is keeping your subordinates happy, by whatever means you see fit. Whether that's through vast and varied amounts of food, monetary bribes, access to alehouses, or religion. You can also go the other way and rule in fear, but that's never my style. Economy and castle management is just one side of the game though. Combat is just as important. There's a range of different types of units, and like resources, they have their own pipelines of weapons and armor required to train them. There's also siege engines, which require skilled engineers to operate, plus a ton of static defences to employ when under siege like spike traps, pitch ditches, and boiling oil. When Stronghold launched back in 2001, it came with a bunch of ways to play. There's the story campaign, an economic campaign, free build mode, and a bunch of standalone missions, utilising the game's siege mechanics and economy management systems. This release aims to bring the game into the modern era, making it easier for people to play in general, while also adding new content to get people back into the game and attract brand new players to the series. Technically, the game is in a great state. It runs flawlessly, as you'd expect with this kind of graphical style, but it's impressive that the engine holds up with the increased unit count and how much stuff is just on screen. The technical overhaul is great, and in my opinion, it's one of the best parts of the entire release. Proper high-resolution support with correct scaling, support for ultra-wide monitors, plus Steamworks integration including multiplayer and the workshop. Some modern amenities have been added to the game too, which aren't game changers by any means, but they do help to make the game more accessible. Things like switchable modern versus classic controls, and mouse wheel camera zooming. For Stronghold veterans like myself, you may not want to change these settings. It really depends on how strong your muscle memory is. I don't think I could ever play with a right click to move on, but you may be different. As for bugs, I only encountered a few, and there are patches being deployed as I write this review, so there's a good chance they're fixed by the time you get your hands on the game. The ones I encountered were fairly minor, a few terrain tiles being red sometimes, and the odd enemy group choosing to sit around, rather than attack my walls. Maybe they were just too intimidated. There was one significant bug I encountered though, and that was with loading a multiplayer game, where trying to do so would leave one of the player's bases destroyed and the game over, and sometimes crashing the game entirely. All of these had been reported to Firefly, and like I said, hopefully they're fixed before you play it. But I thought I should tell you regardless. Stronghold always had a great atmosphere to it, and I'm glad that's remained in this remaster. It was good at the little things, the finer details. Ones that didn't make a marked difference on gameplay, but did immerse you and make you think, it's cool that they added that. Like how every peasant has a name, or troops commenting on having to travel abnormally long distances.
That's quite a run!
Others, like the player introductions for example, have remained and been expanded to
Greetings, Lord Luke.
Hopefully your name's included, but even if it's not, at least you can enjoy the saving guy.
Saving!
The castle vibes remain strong, with peasants walking around doing their thing, commenting on the goings-on, with the music track swelling in the background offering lovely ambience, and the little animations showing workers toiling away in their places of work. These all just bring real life to the castle, and it really does feel like a living, breathing place. It makes you feel pretty bad when they get their heads bashed into something akin to a kicked-in biscuit tin by encroaching macemen. The new campaign contains 14 missions set during the events of the original campaign. The story is fully voiced with intros and contextual cues during the mission, but doesn't include any animated sections like the original campaign does. It's split down the middle between the first 7 missions, which go up against the rat, and the last 7, which go up against the snake. And while that sounds good on paper, there isn't much of a narrative here. I guess it just doesn't really feel like you're actually going up against these old adversaries. Yes, they're mentioned in mission briefings, and occasionally they'll send you a taunt during a mission, but they're all ones you've seen and heard before in the original campaign, so it feels a bit lackluster. I kinda wish they'd made a new adversary and animated them. I think that would have bolstered the narrative side of this campaign quite a lot, and made it feel more unique story-wise. Plus, the cognitive dissonance from fighting the rat and snake versus how difficult these missions are is quite significant. As the developers had mentioned, these campaigns are hard, which is great. However, in the original game, all the campaigns involving the rat were easy. I mean, by design, he's the weakest of the 4 villains by far. It's not as bad with the snake, as some of his old missions were very tough, but having new missions against the rat be harder than old ones versus the pig and the wolf feels a little weird. Regardless, that's a minor complaint, as the main draw of this campaign are the scenarios themselves, not the story. And I'm glad to say that these are great. This campaign is a lot of fun. But be warned, it's hard. Very hard if you crank the difficulty. There is an easy mode if you're struggling, but the campaign is at its best at least on normal, ideally hard. As Firefly said, it's made by veterans for veterans, and it shows. The mission variety is good, ranging from siege scenarios, to economic victories, to straight fights against enemy lords, to timed wave defense scenarios, and more. Stronghold missions have always had an interesting way of making themselves challenging by limiting what kinds of buildings you can construct and the resources that you can trade, and almost all of them will have some sort of limitation that you need to work around. Whether it's being unable to build wooden walls, trade for weapons, or grow wheat, there's always something to make them unique and interesting. I had a great time with the campaigns, and I'm looking forward to playing through missions again at higher difficulties because of the puzzles that they offer. It's incredibly satisfying to work inside the constraints that the game gives you to then come out on top. All in all, awesome work. I'd recommend this campaign to everyone looking for a fresh Stronghold experience. And on a personal note, I loved playing new Stronghold 1 missions after completing the original campaign like 1,000,001 times. It was both nostalgic and fresh at the same time, and I really enjoyed myself. The other piece of significant new content is the Castle Trail, a set of 10 missions that feature historical castles and a predetermined offensive or defensive siege setup. There's a short write-up on each castle with some of its history, then you're on your way. These are pretty challenging puzzles. There's no difficulty setting, so it's up to you to work with what you've got. The complexity varies, with the opening ones being not too tough, and the later ones being pretty mind-bending. I like the variation between them all too, with some showcasing massive stone fortresses that seem impenetrable, and others being hastily assembled wooden forts that you might feel could blow over in the wind. They're not connected in any way, but they do act as a mini campaign of sorts, as you do need to complete each one to move on to the next, which makes for a fun and challenging chunk of gameplay. Stronghold has always had multiplayer, but it was never that easy to play. If you wanted to give it a go before this, you needed to use something like Game Ranger or Hamachi, which did work, but it was a hassle and I found it often just wasn't worth the trouble. Now though, we have full Steam integration, so you can join and invite through your Steam friends or simply use the in-game browser. It's so much better than the way it used to be, and if you are a multiplayer fiend for Stronghold already, then this is likely worth the price of admission on its own. And with Steam integration comes the workshop. Thanks to the in-game editor that's as great as it's ever been, you can now create any kind of map, scenario, or invasion and upload it directly, making it available in a snap. And thankfully, anything made in the original game or Stronghold HD will work with the Definitive Edition, so you can move any old ones directly into this new system really easily. The devs have taken it upon themselves to do so for a few already, so you can dive into some new scenarios on day one. I'm sure it won't be too long before people start filling the workshop with some more awesome maps and missions as well. Playing multiplayer itself is fun, though in a way it's frustratingly simple. The only available mode is PvP with up to 8 players. Teams and alliances are possible, but there's no co-op, no alternative modes, and no sort of PvE at all. And that really, really sucks. Stronghold is a great game, but there's a reason that I think every game bar one since the original has had a skirmish AI. For a game like this, its longevity is totally based on the ability to play co-op. There's a reason Age of Empires 2 is still going so strong. Yes, there is a big PvP scene for it, but do you know why me and half a dozen of my friends constantly go back to it? It's for co-op against the AI, of course it is. I can say with 100% certainty that the friend group I play AoE 2 with would buy Stronghold DE in a second if it had co-op. Some of them have never even played the game before. They wouldn't consider buying it for solo play in a million years, but when co-op's an option, its appeal widens drastically. The other half of my friends did play Stronghold back in the day. But here's the thing with fans of the original Stronghold. We're all freaking old, man. We've got kids, families, full-time jobs, other commitments. We can't game as much as we used to, and for the little gaming time a lot of us have, we want to play together, and we would all love to be able to rotate co-op Stronghold in with our regular AoE 2 sessions. Firefly have said they don't have the resources, dev time, or budget to make skirmish mode happen, and that they have a very small team working on the game, and all in all they're just a pretty small company. Look, I get that, I really do. But I say this directly to the studio heads who call the shots. Please consider finding a way to make skirmish happen. If you want people to be actively playing Stronghold in 5, 10, 15 years, like they do for Crusader, this is how you do it. I understand, game development is tough, so maybe for whatever reason, skirmish is simply impossible, it just cannot happen. If that's the case, you could at least consider some co-op modes other than skirmish. At the bottom level, maybe co-op free build, which would be incredibly simple, or co-op sieges and invasions, or even just the ability to play co-op controlling the same castle with existing missions. Anything would be better than nothing. I want to be able to tell my friends to buy this game so we can play together, but none of them have any interest in playing PvP, so why would they? When I first heard about this game, the first thing I thought Firefly would announce as a feature was Skirmish AI. In my mind, it should be at the top of the list of things to make happen. They've said they'd consider anything people were asking for, but right now there's nothing guaranteed that this will ever be added. For now, all we have confirmed for the future is a couple of free updates and 2 paid DLCs with new campaigns. This is great, but it's no skirmish mode. I'm just hopeful that the game does well enough to consider developing what I consider is the most important feature the original Stronghold could ever receive. Stronghold Definitive Edition is a great game. It successfully brings the original into the modern era and makes it easier than ever to enjoy it either by yourself or with friends as a PvP game. And the price is great too. $15 USD is honestly less than I expected, and future campaign DLCs for just a few dollars is extremely generous in my opinion. But no skirmish mode is just absolutely brutal. I cannot overstate how much of an oversight I think it is to not put in the development time to make this happen. So while I'm hopeful for the future of Stronghold Definitive Edition, I'm concerned that it's going to be dead in the water a year from now, while people still play Crusader with their friends. If you're wanting to play more single-player Stronghold, or specifically PvP, then this is a fantastic buy, and you should pick it up right away. The technical overhaul is a major improvement, and the new content is a great time. Plus, the custom map and scenario options will certainly grow as time goes on, and I have nothing but excitement for what ends up appearing on the Steam Workshop. But for anyone else, like most of the people I know, Stronghold Definitive Edition doesn't have a lot to offer you, and unfortunately you'll probably want to skip this one. Unless they add skirmish mode down the line, in which case you can be sure that you'll hear it from me if that ever happens. Thanks very much for watching, and thanks to my patrons and YouTube members who support the channel. That's Takayo, Wintendo, Bad Ghosts, Sean, Grey Spirit 4, George, Nedders, John Kaiser, King Thickums, Pavel, Bram, Christian, Dan 4, Bishop's Arch, Orion, and Das Rufkin. And my paladins Johnny Woof, Marika, Age of Cause, Joe, Tank, and Hyperion. Thank you all again very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.